On Boxing Day of 1996, the Colorado Police Department received a frantic phone call from a woman in hysterics claiming that her daughter was missing and there was a 3-page long ransom note waiting for her at the bottom of the stairs. This is the case of JonBenét Ramsey. Hey guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. If you're new here, hi, welcome. If you're not, welcome back. Today we're going to be discussing the case of JonBenét Ramsey. I want to let you guys know right now that all the information that I've obtained in this video is free to access on the internet. If you guys want to go and do your own research, I just encourage you guys to stay respectful. These are real people's lives that we're talking about, okay? This video is going to contain themes of child death and possible child abuse, so if that's going to be an issue for you, please click off now. So JonBenét Ramsey was born on the 6th of August 1990 to her mother Patsy Ramsey and her father JonBenét Ramsey. She also had an older brother called Burke, who was 3 years older than her, I believe. Now, the Ramsey family was definitely wealthy. Her dad had a great job, he was making monies, and her mother was a stay-at-home mum. JonBenét was a very pretty girl, okay? She had bright blue eyes, a big smile, huge blonde hair, and she had a really big personality. So at a very young age, her parents had her enrolled in pageanting. I don't necessarily agree with this. I think pageanting has always rubbed me up the wrong way. I don't think it's appropriate for little girls to be dancing around in very revealing outfits and heavy makeup for a male judge. I also know the amount of cases where there's been abuse between these male judges and these young girls, and it's just never ever sat right with me. I don't agree with it. But apparently the Ramseys didn't find an issue. So, like I said, at a very young age, JonBenét was enrolled in pageanting and she was good at it. Very quickly she began to make a name for herself. She was about 6 by this point, okay? And on Christmas Day of 1996, the Ramseys were spending Christmas with family and friends. They had been out all day and they got home very late. The last time JonBenét was seen was when her father was taking her inside to put her to bed. And in the early hours of the following morning, Patsy Ramsey had gone downstairs to get herself something to drink. However, she had noticed that there was a 3-page long ransom note waiting for her at the bottom of the stairs. Immediately, she freaks out. She runs upstairs to check that JonBenét is okay. However, she's not there. She's nowhere to be found. So she wakes up her husband and they go downstairs to call the police. Now, this 911 phone call is very interesting to me because Patsy Ramsey claims that it was just her and her husband in the room at that time. She also, in the phone call, she's very hysterical. She's inconsolable, as you would be if your daughter's just turned up missing. However, at a certain point, she thinks that this phone call has ended. It hadn't. But her demeanour changes. Officers report hearing a second voice, or a third voice even, in the background.
911 emergency.
Police.
What's going on?
By 515th Street.
What's going on there, ma'am?
We have a kidnapping. Hurry, please.
Explain to me what's going on, okay?
There's a note left and our daughter's gone.
A note was left and your daughter is gone? How old is your daughter?
6 years old. She's blind. 6 years old.
How long ago was this?
I don't know. I just found the note. And my daughter's gone.
Does it say who took her?
What?
Does it say who took her?
I don't know. There's a ransom note here.
It's a ransom note?
It says SBTC. Victory. Please.
Okay, what's your name? Are you
Patsy Ramsey, I'm the mother. Oh my God. Please.
I'm sending an officer over, okay?
Please.
Do you know how long she's been gone?
No, I don't. Please, we just got out. Is she right here? Oh my God, please.
Okay, well,
There's somebody.
I am, honey.
Please.
Take a deep breath for me,
Please,
okay?
hurry.
Patsy, 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 Patsy.
At this point, the 911 operator makes herself known. She's like, I'm still here, hi guys. And immediately, the second that she does that, the second that she lets them know she's still there, she hangs up the phone. Now, what's interesting to me is that the police never thought this was odd, never questioned her about it, never pulled her on it. They just sent police round to conduct a search, which also was very interesting. They found no weapons, no evidence, no signs of forced entry, no boot marks in the snow, no locks had been picked, no windows had been smashed, no entry point. What they did find, however, was 6 pieces of crushed up paper that were rough copies of that ransom note, which is very odd because, in my mind, if you've just broken into someone's house, kidnapped their daughter for ransom, you've got a 6-year-old little girl now, you're going to want to get out of there as soon as possible. This person had sat down and taken the time to write out this ransom note 6 times over in Patsy Ramsey's notebook, in her diary, with her pen. What sense does that make at all? They also conducted a handwriting analysis a little bit later on, and it was almost a perfect match for Patsy Ramsey. Right from the start, this ransom note had kind of raised questions. The handwriting analysis had shown that the person writing it at the start was trying very hard to forge someone else's handwriting, to try and disguise it. However, as the note progressed, they had kind of slipped up a bit and they had just started writing normally, and it was their normal handwriting. It also detailed in the ransom note the exact amount of money that JonBenét was going to be making in the coming weeks.
Mr. Ramsey, listen carefully. We are a group of individuals that represent a small foreign faction. We do respect your business, but not the country that it serves. At this time, we have your daughter in our possession. She is safe and unharmed, and if you want her to see 1997, you must follow our instructions to the letter. You will withdraw $118,000 from your account. $100,000 will be in $100 bills, and the remaining $18,000 in $20 bills. Make sure that you bring an adequate size attaché to the bank. When you get home, you will put the money in a brown paper bag. I will call you between 8 and 10 a.m. tomorrow to instruct you on delivery. The delivery will be exhausting, so I advise you to be rested. If we monitor you getting the money early, we might call you early to arrange an earlier delivery of the money, and hence an earlier pickup of your daughter. Any deviation of my instructions will result in the immediate execution of your daughter. You will also be denied her remains for proper burial. The 2 gentlemen watching over your daughter do not particularly like you, so I advise you not to provoke them. Speaking to anyone about your situation, such as police, FBI, etc., will result in your daughter being beheaded. If we catch you talking to a stray dog, she dies. If you alert bank authorities, she dies. If the money is in any way marked or tampered with, she dies. You will be scanned for electronic devices, and if any are found, she dies. You can try to deceive us, but be warned that we are familiar with law enforcement countermeasures and tactics. You stand a 99% chance of killing your daughter if you try to outsmart us. Follow our instructions, and you stand a 100% chance of getting her back. You and your family are under constant scrutiny as well as the authorities. Don't try to grow a brain, John. You are not the only fat cat around, so don't think that killing will be difficult. Don't underestimate us, John. Use that good Southern common sense of yours. It is up to you now, John. Victory. SBTC.
I also think it's kind of interesting how the ransom note explicitly told them that if they were to reach out to law enforcement, that their daughter would be beheaded in great detail, and also let them know that they're very clever and they're well trained with law enforcement counter tactics. So there was not a good chance of his daughter surviving if he went to the police. But yeah, that's the first thing that they decided to do. What baffles me is that this still wasn't raising any questions with the police, which it definitely should have. It really frustrates me because the policing within this entire investigation was just so poor. They were letting friends and family come into a fresh crime scene, just contaminating any evidence. They were just so unprofessional, and it's so frustrating because maybe if they had actually done their job, we would have an answer to who killed this little girl 30 years later. But unfortunately, we don't. So at this point, they pretty much searched the entire premises. The only room that they've not been in is the basement. So JonBenét takes them to the basement and he lets them in, and that is when they find JonBenét's dead body. She was found with her hands bound above her head, and she also had some sort of cable tie, I believe, around her neck. However, her cause of death wasn't strangulation or asphyxiation. The medical examiner actually ruled that her death was caused by blunt force trauma to the head, which in less technical terms means some sort of injury sustained to her brain, probably some sort of brain bleed from being hit. It was also discovered that the tape around her mouth and the cable tie around her neck and her hands being bound, that was all post-mortem, so after she had already died, which is really interesting to me because it's almost like they set her up to be found that way. Does that make sense? She was also found with like a heavy flashlight beside her body. That also really stuck out to me. Now, the second that JonBenét had seen his daughter in this way, he just lost it. He ran in and he picked her up and just took her into his arms. Now, obviously, I can understand that there was a lapse in judgment. He was in shock. He's just discovered his daughter's dead body. However, even still, I cannot wrap my head around the fact that this man just came in and contaminated so much evidence and risked not being able to ID his daughter's killer. It's always baffled me, and it just doesn't make sense to me. But then also, when we look at all the evidence, and trust me, there's a lot more that we're going to get into in just a minute, none of it really makes sense. Why spend so much time in your victim's home writing out 10 plus pages for a ransom note requesting so much money if you never had any sort of intention of taking her with you, and it was always going to end up with her being killed and found in the basement? It was inevitable that her body was going to be discovered. It makes no sense. It was very blatantly a cover-up. What's also interesting is that forensics also found Patsy Ramsey's sweater fibres on the tape around JonBenét Ramsey's mouth. Interesting. They also found that her father was booked to leave the country not long after she died. The Ramsey family also just completely cut any sort of contact with the police after JonBenét's body was found, which again, why aren't alarm bells ringing? I don't know. To me, it's just very, very obvious. Further investigation was done into the ransom note, however, nothing really came of that. They spoke with JonBenét and asked who would know his exact income, who he shared that information with. Nothing really came of that. They did have a couple calls come in within the area. One man said that he had recently hurt a little girl, but when they went to follow up on that, he had taken his own life. And there was a couple other callers, but nothing really came of that, so the police were kind of stuck. And obviously they weren't really looking into the Ramsey family as suspects, which personally I would have. There is more than enough evidence. It's actually pretty overwhelming. I'm not too sure why they didn't. Eventually the leads stopped coming in, and obviously the Ramsey family weren't really willing to work with the police. They stopped contact the second that they found JonBenét's body, so the case ended up going cold. And not much more than a year later, Patsy Ramsey ended up dying from cancer, and then a couple of years after that, so did JonBenét. So now the only remaining member of the Ramsey family is JonBenét's brother Burke. A lot of people actually theorised that Burke had some involvement in JonBenét's death. He had a history of violent outbursts and aggressive behaviour, and on the day that she died, she was found to have undigested pineapple in her system. The same pineapple that her brother was eating as a snack earlier in the day. Now, some people theorise that maybe she took his food without permission and he got really, really angry and he lashed out and hit her over the head with the flashlight, and that caused the blunt force trauma to her head, and that Patsy Ramsey and JonBenét Ramsey were just simply trying to protect their son because they knew that he had some disturbed behaviours.
This is a photo of JonBenét on the Boulder Police Department website. See the jumper? This is a photo of Jeffrey in 1997, 1 year after JonBenét's body was found. See that he has gray hair? This is an actual Epstein file that you can find on the government website. The number's on the screen. See the jumper? Do you see the blonde hair on the little girl? Do you see that Jeffrey has gray hair? This is a comment I got on Instagram on a post on the same topic. I'll give you a second to read it. This is the very next Epstein file after the Epstein file I just showed you. And the file number for this one is on the screen as well. Who is she? Who is that little girl? Release the damn files.
I'm sorry, we told y'all 2 years ago that JonBenét Ramsey was not killed by her brother, that she was part of the P3D0 traffic ring. Literally, the first time I watched the documentary and May said that she had DNA inside of her, she had assault document, and someone tried to pass it off as her riding a fucking bike. I mean, if you know anything about the pageant world, look, the reason my dad did Mother's Cue pageants, he has an older daughter and she had done them for a bit. My older sister did. It was, yeah, JonBenét was trafficked. It went wrong. The night went wrong and they tried to cover it up. That's exactly what the fuck happened. And the whole police botching it, that was an inside out. You can't tell me that wasn't intentional. So yeah, her being in the files absolutely tracks. Y'all, this stuff is right in front of our faces. Like, these types of people are so much more prevalent than the everyday person wants to admit. The everyday person runs across these other people every day. They are every day. It's disgusting.
Me personally, I think Patsy Ramsey and JonBenét Ramsey were definitely heavily involved. I think the evidence is overwhelming. It's not just circumstantial, it is actual forensic evidence. There has been some psychic involvement where psychics have tried to contact JonBenét and have claimed that she has spoken to them and said that it was her father that had killed her. See, I definitely believe in psychics and I believe that stuff like that is possible, but I am also well aware that people will do anything for media attention. So it's not really solid evidence, is it, at all? However, there is a lot of evidence that does suggest what they're saying is true. So who knows? Unfortunately, we may never know, which is really sad. I really, really do hope that in the future I can come and tell you guys that we have an answer and that we figured it out and we know what happened that night. But until then, that is all I have on this case. Thank you guys for sitting and watching. If you guys have any questions, feel free to ask them down below and I will do my best to answer. Please keep the conversation respectful regarding this case because it is a 6-year-old girl and it's very sensitive. I do feel like there is a tendency within the true crime community for people to get a little bit too involved and become detached from how severe this actually is. So just keep that in mind when you're talking about this case, anywhere really. Again, if you would like to do your own research, the information is easily accessible on the internet. If you guys have any other true crime cases you would like me to cover, please do let me know in the comments. I just ask for a little bit of patience because these types of videos take time and a lot of work, and I am a one-man show. I do all my own research, I film my own videos, and I also have to edit it all, so it takes time, okay? So I'm just asking for a little bit of patience, alright? There will be more to come. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I shall see you in the next one. Bye guys!